And welcome to Senate meeting number 6, believe it or not. And it's good to see everybody here today. I know everybody's probably looking forward to spring break, so that just means, a little bit more time to get to your administrative duties. But we'll go ahead and like to kind of go around to welcome the different campus presidents and their senators. So I'll start with downtown campus. And Sameen, how are you all doing?
We're doing very well, Donna. Thank you.
And then on to Polytechnic campus and Nancy.
Yes, hello.
Hello, welcome. Obviously, Joan's here with everybody, all the other senators here in Tempe, so we're good here. And then on West Campus, you guys doing all right? I know Owen is traveling.
Yes, we can hear you well.
Thank you, Stefan. All right, well, we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. And just keeping in mind, if we lose video, we'll take a 10-minute recess. But if we, after 10 minutes, still have lost audio and video, or if we have audio, we'll continue. But if we lose both, we'll just adjourn. So on that note, we'll go ahead and we'll do our quorum calculation. So if you would just please select your campus. We're so used to our remotes that we can just talk to. It's that whole pushing buttons. Yeah, I think we're good. All righty, so looks like we have our quorum. Thank you. And now we'll move on to our Pop Quiz Monday question. The question is, what is the last day to transfer your courses from Blackboard to Canvas? This is a gentle reminder. Just that test, retest process. Yeah, I think we're good. Perfect, perfect, yes. May 31st, yes. So there's still time, but just, remember, even, again, just as a reminder, even if you're not going to be teaching courses over the summer, that's fine, but just give yourself an opportunity to look at your course content to make sure what you had anticipated was transferred over is, in fact, there in place for you for the beginning of the fall semester. Alrighty, so with that, I'm going to go ahead and invite our guest speaker. We have Dr. Aaron Krasnow. So if he does not look anything like Morgan Olson, you're correct. That's because it's Aaron Krasnow, who will be, as you probably know, Associate Vice President, ASU Counseling Services and Health Services. So very happy to have him here. And I've had the pleasure of working with him for a few years now. So thank you.
All right, thank you. I've been called worse than Dr. Olson, I'll tell you that much. So thanks for the invitation. Always a pleasure to be here. This is like it seems like I come every couple of years. So some of you may have seen me talk before. I don't know what that means, like whether that's people are like, we should have him come in again, or whether something happens. But whatever it is, I'm always happy to be here. I think this was spurred by a number of things. One is the universal experience by everybody at ASU, actually nationally, internationally as well, about the ever-increasing complexity and intensity of the student social and emotional health experience. So I've yet to meet a faculty member, a staff member, or any other student who doesn't recognize that in their environment. And so there's an acuity in all of our experience about student mental health and social and emotional concerns. And then recently we were invited by the Arizona Board of Regents to present on some mental health trends. So in that regard. Provost Searle and others thought maybe worth doing a little bit of an update related to that. So what you're going to see is a modified version. I'll do it quickly of what we showed the Board of Regents, and then, of course, want to leave time for questions and then hopefully answers. We'll find out about the answers. So I want to show you some national trends, just to set some context of what we're seeing in student mental health. So this experience of students being more stressed, having more difficulty, is something that's caught the media's attention. There's been an interesting cycle in the media recently, interesting to me anyway, where there's been more and more stories and reporting about the student mental health crisis. What's happened is in a 3-year media cycle, it's gone from students are incredibly distressed more than ever. That was 2 years ago. Last year, it was universities are fundamentally failing their students. And then this year, it's universities are doing something about it. So that's actually, in the span of a media cycle, 2.5 years of doing that has been really good. As it relates to me, none of you will have any sympathy, but as it relates to me, I've done 20 media interviews in 2019 alone. I have another one on Wednesday with The Atlantic. And I'm just one person. It's not like I'm the only person in the country thinking about this. They just find their way to ASU, of course, and to me. And so that energy is in all the environments. And so you see things, all that this was from PBS NewsHour. This is something from Scientific American. What's interesting about the media cycle, to me anyway, is that there's a lot of broad painting with the same brush, so that colleges are kind of seen as the same. That happens in all of our disciplines, of course. Like, oh, if you've seen one physics department, that's how they all are. If you see one teacher's college, that's how they all are. And of course, none of that is true. Well, the same is true for health and counseling, mental health service delivery at universities. Everybody's trying to do it differently, but we often get painted with the same brush. What you see here is a quote from Scientific American, where it talks about students may wait weeks for basic consultation. That is not true at ASU. We're the only university of any size, let alone in our scope, where there's no wait for any intake with any of our clinicians. We're the only one who's pulled that off. Any student can walk in at any time for any reason to talk to one of our clinicians, and then we figure it out from there. But the national conversation, and sometimes even the local conversation, somehow that must not be true, even though it actually is true. So sometimes the media story, despite the fact that I'm interviewed all the time, still gets this wrong, but it may be right at other institutions, or if you've worked at other institutions, you may have heard those things about it. That's not true for us, and I'll talk about that. So people ask, why is this the case? Why are students increasingly more stressed, more anxious, more depressed? All of that is true. The slope of the line in terms of all measures of human emotionality is increasing, and is not 100% understood why. There's some prevailing theories. Here's a few examples in that regard. There's also some beliefs that somehow particularly this coming generation of traditional age college students has fundamentally been failed by their parents. That's like a dominant story, that somehow the parenting, like right now, parents are messing up their kids. Well, here's the thing. All of us who were once children were thought of the same way that our parents messed us up too. I, in fact, did a presentation one time where I pulled up quotes and I put them up on the screen, and I asked a big audience of people, guess the generation, and it was things like too close to their parents and wrapped up in technology and will never get a job and narcissistic. And I said, like, what generation does this describe? And everybody would be like millennials or iGen. And actually, it was media reports from like the 19-teens to 20s about what became the greatest generation. And so there's this prevailing story about young people that they're all messed up and it's the parents who messed them up or they're messed up. And it's just so funny to me, like in the teens, they were too connected to technology. Well, the technology at the time was radio. Right? And so people would get a radio and they'd sit in their living room and they'd kind of sit around it, and somehow the generation before them would be like, this is destroying society. Right? And so we've been doing this for a while. We don't 100% understand all these trends, but we don't know why exactly yet, other than our own biases, the idea being that every generation thinks the generation after them is the worst, although this time we might be right. That's the joke. But we don't know why. I'm sure there's scientists in the room who are going to figure that out, or your departments will. But we know what. More anxious, more depressed, more feeling overwhelmed, more socially isolated, more lonely, less sleep. All of those are true about this traditional age college student. So here's some of the trends in a period of since 2010 to this was 18 data, 140% increase in being treated for anxiety, large increase in reports of feeling overwhelmed by anxiety. These are college students in the last 12 months. So a third of college students are overwhelmed by their anxiety. 40% are so depressed that it interfered in the last 12 months. These are massive increases when you think of population data in 8 years. And so these trends are what we're experiencing. I mean, this is difficult. It is depressing at times. I hope you experience it also as validation of your experience. Because if you've been in the business for more than a few years, you've experienced this trend as well. I've been at the university for 16 years. I started as a staff psychologist in the counseling center, and we certainly saw depressed students and anxious students and suicidal students and all sorts of things then. But I also, and now that I'm managing all those things, I've also experienced that same rate increase. The national trend shows that the rate of counseling center intakes nationally is 6 times enrollment growth. So this is not only a function of the increasing enrollment at universities, it's something else going on. Here's some, the stress level increases and thoughts of suicides have doubled, which is, you know, an unmitigated disaster for us as a society. So we have to figure out how to do this at ASU, and we have the huge advantage of being ASU, so we get to design it ourselves. We're going to figure it out. We're going to do things differently, and so I'm going to show you what we've been doing, and then I would welcome some questions. We know this is why students drop out. And so as we have improved so many of the systems at the institution relative to retention risk and moving that needle over the past decade or more, 16 years, 18 years, from moving to a university where the retention of the individual is the primary experience that we want. We want to sharpen all of our technologies, all of our individual behavior. Mental health is probably the last few percentage point differences in terms of getting us into a space where we recognize that most students, if not all students, can be retained. Because our systems are so robust, our warning systems are great, we have so much predictive ability, now it's down to some of these human variables. And then certainly it affects people's GPA. How could it not? If you're depressed, it's more difficult to learn. If you're so anxious you can't go to class, it's more difficult to learn. Some local data, a quarter of our students are reporting feeling very lonely. And loneliness is, we think of as an upstream and a downstream variable as it relates to mental health or social emotional concerns. It's upstream, of course. If you're lonely, you're more likely to feel depressed. There's some anxiety. You also have some disaffectation in terms of your environment. And if you're struggling with something, you're more likely to isolate. And so that it kind of is this vicious cycle for many students. And that's in the last 2 weeks. So this is a snapshot basically of the student experience at any given time. A quarter of your students in your classes right now, in your labs, are feeling very lonely. The experience of young people's loneliness now is crystallized in quotes that we hear over and over again from college students when we do focus groups, which is, I feel lonely even when I'm with everybody. That is something that I think many of us can relate to, but is a dominant experience in this 18 to 24 age group, and we could all discuss about why. But that's, so the fact that they're in class, the fact that they're even in co-curricular or extracurricular activities is not necessarily by itself preventing all of their loneliness. Here's some trend data of counseling services appointments. From fiscal year 14 to where we're projecting for this year, you can see the increases. 130 over the 9 years, and then 100% basically in the last 5. Here's an interesting fact. 2014 is when I started being the supervisor of health and counseling. So you can blame me if you want. That's my staff does. They said, well, this is the Krasnow variable, clearly. And I'm like, whoops, sorry. But this points to that trend for help seeking. And what we see is that it increasingly, as I mentioned, it's 6x enrollment growth. We're past that. But what's happening is many students are waiting till college to seek help. And as we are increasingly an inclusive university, we are also engaging with people who historically maybe either didn't, couldn't, or wouldn't engage in help seeking of all types. And so they come to college, and it's not like we're incredibly resourced. I could always use more counselors and psychologists and social workers. Everybody could. But compared to some folks' experience, either cultural, individual, economic circumstances, when they come to this environment, then the help is available. So we think our success as an inclusive institution is also a function of this increased help-seeking. We're there for people, and that's true, I'm sure, in your own experience in the help-seeking they seek from you as faculty, as leaders in the community. I'll get through this part fast. This is where we compare to national levels. We tend to be within a percentage point or two, often better than the national average, but the rates are still high in all of these variables. And so anything that's bold is doing better, depending on the variable. But, you know, in terms of percentage of students who reported the following, it's very difficult to handle. 30% are reporting family problems. You know, I hear from faculty sometimes, how could everybody's grandmother die in the same semester? And the answer is, this is the age group in which that happens, right? And so the 18 to 24-year-olds, for the most part, if you start thinking of the ages in which they're starting to lose people, these are often their first losses. And so these are acute for them, and it's different when you're older than that, but this is sometimes the first time they would lose a family member, and the interference and the grief and the disruption of that plays out in some of this data. We decided to look at grads versus undergrads, and there's some differences in that regard. For those of you who work with graduate students, some of the social and emotional variables are worse than the undergraduates. There's certainly been some recent writing about that, some opinion pieces in the New York Times and other places about what graduate school does to people. That's too simplistic a way to frame it, but it's part of the national conversation about the experience. All of us in the room were once graduate students, and so we remember those experiences of challenge and stress, but also deprivation and struggle. And so how does that play out? Well, you can see some of the differences between undergraduates, but you also see some similarities. So things that we think of might be different for a graduate student who might be older, they're similarly feeling totally exhausted as an undergraduate. And that's useful to understand as we think about either challenging our beliefs about ways that students are in terms of cohorts. And so this data I'll provide to you. We don't send it all over the place because it's decontextualized, so we don't love it when it gets out there, but there's parts of this that I can send and share so you have a sense of this stuff, and you can see some of the risk indicators there too. We have certainly plenty of students who are really struggling. So this is what we do. We take a public health model. This is a simplified version of it. I'm sure there's experts in public health in the room. What we're trying to do is figure out what does everybody in the environment need to know how to do, and what does everybody gain? What do some people need to know how to do, and what do they gain, and what do only a few people do? So the counseling center and the health center, we're experts, right? And so we're in the we're the clinical service delivery, and that's for a few people, provided by a few people. But if you work upstream of that, we've got to figure out what does everybody in the environment need. What do they all need to be trained in? What do they all need to be sensitized to? What do some people in the environment need in order to do this? What do you need within your department, in your college? What do academic advisors need, which is the some category, that a faculty member might not need, or vice versa? We're trying to figure that out through partnerships, of course, with all of you and your colleges. And then we really, as always, like everything at ASU, we're really led by the students themselves. And so for an example, we have an Active Minds chapter, which is a national organization that focuses on destigmatizing mental health. It has it's wildly successful in its effort to tell students that it's normal to experience social and emotional concerns. Our current Active Minds chapter is led by Stephanie Cahill. We've written a bunch of stories about her at ASU because she's so fantastic, who's the president of this and a bunch of other things. Tomorrow, she's hosting a second annual mental health conference in which she's invited speakers from all over the country to come give a talk about mental health for students, by students, including a former NBA player, an activist for March for Our Lives, like incredible energy to really tell students like, hey, we're in this together, it's okay to seek help. And so we always want to follow those students. And that fits into that peer influence, that's everybody. The only thing that's at scale at this institution is the students themselves. As faculty, as staff, as professionals, we're always smaller than the scale, but the peers, they match up. And so the more we can train them and let them lead, the more likely we are to reach everybody. We were recent recipients of the Healthy Campus Award from the Active Minds National Chapter, which is a very prestigious thing to happen. You can see the other universities there. It's a real indication that our approach to these things, like these other institutions, is a better approach by trying to think about the whole ecosystem. Many universities think about their clinical service delivery as sort of sectioned off. which is problematic in two ways, in my opinion. One, it communicates that the job of social and emotional well-being is only the domain of the provider, which is not true, never worked, would never work. It's all of our responsibility. And so by taking that all of our responsibility, then the counseling center fits in where it needs to fit in. I'm a clinical psychologist by training. I have specialized skill sets. I sound like Liam Neeson there. I have a special set of skills. And in that regard, I should be doing those things, and you all have specialized skill sets, and you should be doing those things in special circumstances. But we're all humans. And we're all here to educate the whole student, and we're in this together. So there's things that all of us could do that is not required, a psychologist is not required to do that. Being a good human is required, and we need to train that. And so we're recognized for that effort in that regard. This is an example. We buy products. Tau Connect is a product. It's an online module system of self-help. We've piloted embedding this in ASU 101, and we want to do that more. So we partner with the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences to embed access to this service as a requirement of their ASU 101 courses. And 3,400 students signed up for it and did some of the modules, which is great scaling. And so we're going to bring that back to the rest of the deans and say, hey, are we ready to do this and all the other things? Every ASU student has access to Tau Connect just by having an asu.edu email address. Here's a little secret. You all do too. Tau Connect didn't differentiate between asu.edu email addresses. And so I can send out how to access that to you. I'll send it to you, Donna. You can send it to everybody. No cost to students. It's all these modules that are basically pure self-help. Feeling overwhelmed, want to learn some mindfulness, want to learn about time management, you're feeling depressed, you wonder if you have an alcohol problem, all sorts of things. People walk through it themselves. Super consumable, 3-minute videos, bunch of assessments, all available to them. We're trying to spread the word on it, but you know how things go. You do the best to tell everybody, and then it filters wherever it filters. We're doing peer training that we call Devils for Devils to just build up better peers. So we trained, we'll be approaching a couple thousand students at this point at different levels of training. I'm working fast because I know you've got a busy agenda, and I'll send it all to you. We've also worked with all of your colleges to embed wellness branding into your colleges. And the real trick, in addition to doing this, is making sure people know about it. So this is also a little bit of a litmus test with a leadership group like this. Like if you've never seen this stuff before, that's worth knowing. Because we're supposed to be embedding this within there, and we got to make sure it gets out as far as possible. But in our efforts in well-being, working up the chain, we want to work in the wellness space, not only in the sick space. And so by doing that, we're trying to embed different ways to just put out the good stuff for people so that we can prevent some things, but also help people cope. And we've started to brand some of those efforts within your colleges so that it's consistent with either the term or the method or the strategy, or at least the naming. You know, the art of wellness, you can imagine which college that is. Engineering your health, you can imagine that. So these ideas of making this more normative in the experience and not the domain of the health center providers or the counseling center providers. That's what's going to lead us farther into succeeding here, and that's why we've made such progress, is because we're going to see it as all of our responsibilities. We've built up additional resources on our webpage about this is tips. For faculty, when you have a student who has a concern, what we decided to do is embed a great article from the Chronicle of Higher Education, which President Crow and Provost Searle had sent around. Many people had seen that, but we wanted to embed there because it goes very specifically in your roles as faculty and your colleagues, how to help somebody, and it's always there as a resource. We've worked with each of your, I'm going to go through this quickly, so don't bother reading it. We've worked with each of your colleges to create what we call a folder, if you don't have to make it as a folder as a college, about what to do if, basically. If you have a student who's disruptive, if you have a student that you're concerned about, who do you call? And so this is the generic version, but every college has one that's like, here's the person you call within your dean's office, or here's the person within your academic structure, or whatever else. Again, distribution of this has always been the trick. So if this is the first time you're seeing that, that's important for me to know. We partner with typically your associate dean to pull that off. And then our whole approach is to provide as many supports in as many places as possible. We want the student not to have to figure out for themselves where the right place to go is. We just want them asking for help. And from there, if our filters are good and our training are good in all environments, faculty, staff, systems, alumni, families, if we've trained everybody, then the navigation is the responsibility of the receiver of the request for help. And the students themselves don't have to triage. They don't have to figure out if it's the right kind of emergency. They don't have to figure out if you're the right helper. They just ask for help, and then we navigate from there. So with that, I'm done with my part.
Thank you so much, Aaron, especially for distilling that down and coming on short notice.
Sure.
But so I'll go ahead and just to the different campuses if you have a few more minutes,
Oh, yeah.
and maybe, okay. So I'll start with the downtown campus. Does anybody have questions for Aaron?
Yes, Donna, we do.
I apologize if you mentioned this before, but if you have somebody that is having some kind of depression and as a teacher, I refer them to you guys. The student told me that the first time it was free, but the second time they had to pay. And so is that something, I was trying to encourage them to come and talk to you, and that was the excuse that they were saying why they didn't want to come to health services at ASU. What can I say if I encounter this situation again?
Sure. So our strategy on, thank you for the question, and it comes up a lot. We do charge for some services, but we never charge for initial appointments, and we never charge as we try and figure out with the student what to do. We also will waive fees for any student who needs it at any time. All the student, in our conversation, what we're doing with them, in theory, and I'd have to always put the caveat, this is what we're supposed to be doing, is talking to the students about all sorts of things. And if finances are a barrier, we waive the fees right then. We're still partially self-funded in that regard, so we do have some fees for ongoing service. So the message that I would like you to carry is go to them, there's no charge, and if you can't or don't want to pay, they will waive the fees, and we will. And so that's the message always. We just don't want finances to get in the way, even though currently we do charge for some ongoing services. What we charge for is group counseling and then ongoing individual counseling when that makes sense. And again, we waive about 50% of our care right now, and so it's a totally okay thing to do.
Thank you. Any other questions, Samin, from downtown?
No more questions from downtown. Thank you.
Thank you. Nancy, any questions on Polytechnic campus?
Yes, we have a question. So occasionally I have people come into my classroom from the Peace Corps or study abroad. Can the counseling come to my classroom for like a 15-minute reminder for the students? Because I know they don't remember 101. And I teach mostly upper grads, upper division students rather. Do you guys have staffing to do that over at the Raleigh campus, 15 minutes
Yes.
in and out?
Yes. So if you'd like us to come to do an introduction to the counseling center or do a brief overview of services, or really topical, if you wanted to have someone come in and do something on stress management. We have a big wellness team, not just in the counseling services, so all you would need to do is request that of us. There's ways to do that on our web pages, or you can just contact me directly. And then I'll filter it from there. I'm happy to receive the requests. Depending on the request, I send different kind of people. But whatever you need. And if it's for 15 minutes to do an overview about what's available, just to remind people, give them that little booster shot of information, we're happy to do it.
That's a great question. And any other questions from Polytechnic?
I think that's it.
All right, thank you. We do have a question here in Tempe, please. Yeah.
Yes, I'm Bob Wood from the School of Business. I noticed that you don't mention the local churches at all as a resource for mental health. That kind of surprised me.
Oh, well, that was not intentional, if I didn't. We take a whole person approach, which someone's spiritual interests, needs are always part of the conversation. We have a close relationship with the Council of Religious Advisors, so CORA, which operates, of course, on all 4 campuses and represents 80 different groups at this point or more. And so we keep that relationship very strong. We will always engage in someone's personal needs in that regard and then refer them or connect them or remind them about the support in that regard. In that regard, we know it takes everybody to do this work, and we are not trying to own the franchise or communicate that our service is better than anybody else's. I'm sure there's a few other health professionals in the room. One of the secrets of Psychology is that for mild depression, exercise works as well, if not better, than psychotherapy. And so we know that. And so often what we're doing with people is just getting them moving again. The same thing about faith-based support, that we want people connected to the thing that they think is going to be most helpful. That goes for churches, any other faith group, traditional healing, anything at all that would be supportive for the student. That's part of our assessment process about what's worked in the past, what they would like to try, and if they feel disconnected, we have the resources to connect them.
Fantastic. And please, we have another gentleman.
Yeah, the trend you described of increasing demand for counseling services overlaps with the trend I observe in my personal office hours of fewer and fewer and fewer students coming to see me. Now, I wonder, is that in fact because I'm getting older, I repel them more and more, or is that are the students, or am I an outlier, or are the students isolating themselves and creating part of these problems? I mean,
that's a fascinating point about the trend you've noticed. I can't tell you whether you're an outlier, but you're in a room full of people who could. So I don't know in that regard. However, what we do know is that more students are coming to us who are interested in a caring adult. And so what they know is that they're going to get that at the counseling center. And I'm guessing if they experience the environment, if all of the environment is experienced as a set of caring adults, they could navigate that more. But that's not saying you're not being communicating a caring adult. I think it's probably a bigger leap for a young person to assume that by virtue of the station that you sit in, which is you're a faculty member, you kind of held in this category, and it's probably on some level, if you're seeing that trend, just sort of a good bet. Now, it's true you're a caring adult, but they might not know that, but they're going to guarantee it and get it in the counseling center, and they don't have to maybe take that risk. We also have some students who are so oriented to making sure faculty know that they're okay, that they're less likely to then identify themselves in office hours as struggling or not able to mask it as well. That's incredibly true with graduate students especially, right? And that this desire to maintain in the face of their struggle for the mentor, for the advisor, for the faculty support. And so it's one of those moments of caution that if you're seeing that trend, it is worth looking at how can you, if you want to reverse it, how can you do that? And I don't know enough, but I'm going to start asking around the country to see if other folks in my situation have seen that same trend.
Stefania Traconia from the School of Mathematics. I was just wondering if you could elaborate a little bit how you communicate to the students all the resources available besides the ASU 101, which I don't think is sufficient. I had just this Friday a graduate student in my office who told me that several of his peers reported being subjected to sexual harassment, and they didn't want to file a formal complaint, at least not as the first step, and yet it didn't even occur to them that what they should do is go to the health counseling services. At least that's what I suggested. But again, it didn't occur to them. And I think it's especially important for sexual harassment because this required reporting policy, I think it's a double-edged sword because students now are less likely to actually confide into faculty because they know as soon as they do, I mean, it will be official and maybe they don't want that.
I will answer the first part of your question, and I'll leave it to others to answer or talk about the policies. The distribution of information has been our biggest challenge, getting people to not just hear it, but understand it and then flexibly use it. And that's true for all health communication. It's like it's one thing to hear it, it's another thing to internalize it, and then in the moment, execute. And so our strategies are to try and do it continuously through the student's experience, consistent with where they're at in the institution. And even then, it's often not enough or doesn't sink in. And then also try and saturate the environment and train up faculty and staff in the material, and still that's not always enough. So I'm one of the few people, this is a privilege of mine, I'm one of the few people approved by Provost Searle to send an email to everybody at the university. There's like a pretty tightly controlled group because it's so important, but it's that twice a year email from me that basically says, here's what to look for and here are the resources available,
You
and
mean
still sometimes people don't know.
emails to the students?
And then we get one to the students as well through their My ASU.
Because I asked,
Yeah.
and they said, no, we have never got anything about
I know, and that's really one of our biggest challenges. And I would venture to guess I'm not alone. I'm looking at the leadership. I'm not alone in that regard. Like, this is a very challenging set. We start it in pre-matriculation. We start it before they even come to orientation with that communication, and still, the experience that you reported is common enough that we have to keep trying to do that.
And these are graduate students, so they've been here for a while.
Yeah, and even then, through the graduate college, directly to them in classes, and still we're struggling. So I welcome any strategy, any idea, anything that you've got that we can do a better job of disseminating. We're trying as much as I know how to do, and I would take any idea.
Thank you. Please introduce yourself.
Good afternoon. I'm Ken Brooks from the Design School. I'm faculty member and former administrator here. In my years, I have found that there have been a number of students who are reluctant to take my suggestion that they go to the counseling service because they see that as a judgment on my part that there's some pathology or failure on their part. And I have learned to remind them that if they were having struggles with writing, we have a writing center on campus that can help them with writing. If they have trouble with research, we have all kinds of specialists in the library that can help them find resources. And I remind them that if they're having difficulty with time management or other life pressures, that we have a counseling center that can help them figure out strategies on that. And so instead of looking at it as an illness or failure on their part, it's a resource for better service to people who have expertise that can help them move to the next level of wellness on that.
Thank you. That's perfectly said. It's a strengths-based approach. It plays to what has worked or could work for them. I love that, and that's great advice. When I think about the counseling center, like all services, when I talk to a student about going and they're reluctant, I talk to them and I said, the fact that we're talking about something means your life is not going exactly the way you want it to go, and so our job is to help you figure out resources to help turn that in the direction you want, of which counseling is one, but there's so many others. Let's be in that dialogue and figure out the right way. And so thanks for saying that. It really matches how we want to be received as well.
I'm Helene Osbaugh from the School of International Letters and Cultures. And last year, for the first time, students came into my class with a cat or a dog. What is the university policy on emotional support animals?
Okay. There are policies on it. I encourage you, if there are specific questions, that you contact the Disability Resource Office, who can help you navigate the particulars of a student if it is some reason. I'll give you the broad brushstrokes on it. There's a difference between service animals and emotional support animals. Service animals are allowed in any environment. They come in two categories: dogs and miniature horses. Emotional support animals are any other kind of animal. They are not allowed in most environments. So the fact that they brought a cat into the classroom as an emotional support animal would be outside of our policies. Now, navigation of such is tricky because someone's done it for a reason. They are allowed in residence halls because that's part of housing law. And so I've just made it worse by saying all that on some level. So what I really want you to do is that if you are encountering that scenario and you want to know how to approach a student about it, if it matters to you in that regard, you call the Disability Resource Office, or DRC, and get advice on what you are allowed to say and what you are not allowed to say. They are experts in the navigation of disability law, and all of us are responsible for fulfilling our duties in that regard. There are things you cannot ask someone with a disability, and there are things that you can, and I want you to get those exactly right instead of me giving. I probably would get it right, but I don't want to. I want to give the experts their due.
Excellent questions and great answers. And then with West Campus, Stefan, do we have any questions?
No questions from West.
Well, I want to thank you so much for coming today. And just, I knew this would be a very well-received topic, so I appreciate all your insight. And I'm sure you'll get a few emails regarding contacting.
All right, thank you.
Thank you so much. All right. right, great discussion. So thank you everybody for your insight and input and shared experiences. So before I begin the chair's report, always like to begin with highlighting one of our senators. And of course, this month we are highlighting Dan McCarville. He has worked, so thank you, Dan. He has worked for ASU now for 7 years. And of those 7, 6 have been spent in the Senate. So thank you for just hitting the ground running. And that's especially since your former life before ASU was not in academics for a long period. So you just jumped right in. And when asked, why he became involved with Senate, he provided 2 good reasons. First, he had nothing to do on his Mondays. No, that's not true at all. But first, joining the Senate helped him understand the big picture of an academic institution. Again, as I mentioned, you spent, I believe, 27 years outside of academics. So we're glad you're here. And the second reason for joining the Senate was to join the student, well, he was part of the student faculty policy committee, and he's absolutely right. Many of our important policies at ASU are developed and updated through the SFPC. And he just simply wanted to participate in making impactful improvements to the policies affecting students and faculty. And, did he learn anything from this process? Thankfully, the answer is yes. And Dan reported that our job as senators does not need to end with a vote and approval, and that part of the joy of serving in the Senate was really seeing the implementation process and to work on a new policy from the start all the way through implementation. It is really rewarding. So I just really want to thank you so much for seeing the value of shared governance and dedicating so much of your time here and supporting all of our faculty. So very grateful. Thank you. All right. I just figured while we're on this, I'll recognize a couple of other individuals. Jianming Ling, one of our senators in biomedical informatics, who was recently recognized for his studies in computer-aided diagnosis, specifically for lung and colon cancer, as well as pulmonary embolism. So that's just another, just highlighting some other great faculty here. And then, of course, our own president on Poly, Nancy Cook, who is the plenary speaker in Maryland at the Human Systems Conference, and we'll discuss kind of what her knowledge and her expertise is about team cognition and human teams, and present some findings from the studies with the human autonomy team. So just always nice to see what, all the work that our faculty are doing, and just really grateful for all of that. A couple other things just to go through briefly. The UAC did meet with President Crow recently, and we continued our discussions on faculty salaries. We provided that a while back, and that if you are interested in seeing the letter that was submitted to President Crow, you are more than welcome to go to the Senate website and under the document database. And I can always provide a link to that later. If you forget this, it's totally fine. And just, acknowledging consistently that he is working actively toward, improving salaries, and has that clearly on his radar. We also the UAC hosted in February a breakfast with our Arizona Board of Regents. It was a great opportunity to kind of invite some of our faculty to kind of discuss a few topics of interest. The main one being really looking at something that Aaron just mentioned, with increasing attainment with our residents, our Arizona residents. And part of it is, just healthy body, healthy mind helps retain students not only in our university, but also helps to try to attract them. So that was a big topic of conversation, and knowing that the two go hand in hand. Education and health supports learning, and if we can increase our enrollment of our Arizona residents, it really helps support the economy and growth of Arizona as a state to be competitive. And it's just such a great, it's a great opportunity to really showcase our faculty and the Regents. We're overwhelmingly very pleased with just the sense of community, too, that our faculty really work hard to try to provide to our students and to each other, acknowledging kind of what we see as the rising concerns with mental health, or just wellness in general. I want to just highlight a couple of opportunities also. There are 2, you probably received an email recently for 2 leadership opportunities. Thank you, Chuck. I was like, oh yeah, slide. So this was an initiative, honestly, that began back in July, and I was invited to attend kind of like a 2-day whirlwind retreat with the President's Council, and it was during that time that I had an opportunity to meet Manu, who is a wonderful individual, if any of you have met her, and is an enterprise architect and senior fellow within the Leadership and Institutional Design. So these, what's nice is we've, over the course of what is now, like I said, since the summer, worked together, and through her team and through the leadership group, have now 2 opportunities for kind of faculty development. And right now it's being offered specifically to our senators. And they are, as you can, I know not everybody has the opportunity to go in person, so that's why we've, they've really done a nice job to make sure that they're available, as online opportunities as well. And just to know that, these will be continued to be offered in the spring and the fall semester for just improving our capacity to be leaders, to communicate clearly, and have more positive interactions between our faculty, more interactions with our students, more interactions with our staff, and just having a clear line of more faculty leadership development. So I sincerely hope you guys take advantage of these opportunities. It's been a great opportunity for me to work with them, and was something that I was really passionate about, making available to our faculty senators, and eventually will be made available to all of our faculty members, not just senators. So that's been a really great opportunity. Another thing that I wanted to mention is the Graduate and Professional Students Association is kicking off their first Mentoring and Wellbeing Summit. So again, this is not just for your graduate students, it's also, they really would love to see faculty come out to this. So the goal of the summit is to enhance the ASU graduate student experience through mentoring. The GPSA, as I mentioned, would love to not just have students, but faculty to attend. And the event is a 2-day event. It will be taking place on March 12th and 13th in the student pavilions in Sonita VNC on the Tempe campus. It is a 2-day event, so just kind of reminding you, the first day will consist of various wellness-related trainings offered by ASU, where graduate students and faculty can learn kind of some of the tools necessary to create more of a community. Again, it kind of touches on some of the topics that Aaron just mentioned. And the second day is going to be, again, presentations by they recently had, the GPSA had their Outstanding Faculty Mentor kind of awards. And from that, the keynote is going to be Coach Missy Farr-Kay from the women's golf team. And if you do only one thing, and this is, I'm quoting Michelle, who is the president of the GPSA, if you do only one thing, come see Coach Missy speak. She's just truly inspirational. Her athletes adore her, and you can see why once you get an opportunity to see her speak. She's just a fantastic person. So she's going to be looking at mentoring of elite athletes as her discussion, and significance of emotional resilience. So I really encourage you to take opportunity with that, and I know we're all busy, but they're really great opportunities for us to connect with our students. If you have a graduate program, just bring them all with you. Make it an outing. And that's all I have for the chair's report. We'll go on to new business. At this point, I would like to invite Lily to come up and introduce our CAPC motions. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. The following motions and proposals will be taken up at the CAPC meeting this Thursday, February 28th, and then will be brought back to the Senate for a vote at our next meeting on March 25th. So as always, if you have any questions, suggestions, or concerns, please get them to me by this Thursday so we can make sure that they're addressed at a CAPC meeting. And then certainly let us know before the next Senate meeting so we can make sure that all parties that have an interest can be represented. So the items listed in Appendix A will be brought up at the CAPC meeting, but will not be brought up before the Senate. So if you have any questions or concerns or suggestions, please get those to me by this Thursday morning. So here goes the motions. Request from the College of Nursing and Health Innovation for the name change of a graduate degree from MS in Aging and Lifespan Development to MS in Aging. Request from the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences, Department of English, for the name change of a graduate degree from MAS in American Media and Popular Culture to MAS in Film and Media Studies. Request from the W.P. Carey School of Business, Department of Supply Chain Management, for the establishment of a graduate degree, MS in Supply Chain Management. Request from the Ira A. Fulton Schools of Engineering, the Polytechnic School, for the establishment of a graduate degree, MS in Graphic Information Technology. Request from the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences, School of Civic and Economic Thought and Leadership, for the establishment of an undergraduate degree, BS in Civic Economic Thought and Leadership. Request from the new College of Interdisciplinary Arts and Sciences, School of Mathematical and Natural Sciences, for the establishment of a graduate degree, PSM in Forensic Science. Request from the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences, School of Life Sciences, for the establishment of a graduate certificate, Computational Life Sciences.
Thank you, Lily. And now on to some of our old business on items that we'll be voting on. There are new course proposals. Remembering these are our consent agenda and that we'll be voting on these in bulk. I will go around to the different campuses first to see if there's anything to be removed from the consent agenda. So we'll go ahead and Samin, anything to be removed from the consent agenda in downtown?
Nothing to be removed downtown.
Thank you. Nancy?
Nothing to remove.
Fantastic. It looks like we're fine over here for now in Tempe. And then Stefan, any
Nothing here.
Perfect. Well, good. We'll go ahead and if we could call a vote, please. I'll give everybody another couple seconds. I think we're good. Go ahead and close the vote. Perfect. We have 83 yes, 1 no, 2 abstain. Perfect. The motion is passed. Thank you, everybody. Next, we have one committee motion. I'll ask Stefania if she would please come and read her motion 2019-27.
So the title is Amending ACD 804 Tobacco-Free Campus, and to include a ban on vaping, we recommend a background change. I don't know if Chuck can pull up. Background change, ASU recognizes that the use of tobacco and electronic smoking devices, so that's the addition in boldface, is a public health hazard and is dedicated to providing a healthy, comfortable, and educational, productive learning environment for faculty, staff, students, and visitors. The university complies with state law on smoking. The title also will change. We will add smoke and tobacco-free campus. And then in the policy will read smoking and the use of smokeless tobacco products, including all electronic smoking devices, are prohibited in or on all university. And the rest of the policy is the same. The smoking and the electronic devices part in the policy will be linked to the definitions. The definition of electronic smoking devices will read devices that simulate smoking through inhalation of vapor or aerosol from the device, including e-cigarettes, e-cigars, e-pipes, hookahs, water pipes, vape pens, and all forms of smoking tobacco. And then the definition of smoking the burning of, inhalation from, exhaling the smoke from, or the possession of a lighted cigar, cigarette, pipe, or any other matter or substance which contains tobacco, or any other matter that can be smoked, or the inhaling or exhaling of smoke or vapor from an electronic smoking device. I just wanted to say that the Student Government Council of Presidents and the ASU Staff Council endorsed this policy, so the faculty group is the only one left.
Thank you, Stefania, and your group for crafting that motion. We'll go ahead and call for a vote. Oh, pardon me. Yep, sorry, I was just jumping ahead. I'll go ahead and, Smeen, any questions or concerns with this motion?
No questions, no concerns.
Thank you. Nancy, on Polytechnic?
Questions or concerns?
Thank you. Please.
Hi, Crystal Griffith, School of Film, Dance, and Theater. Perhaps I missed it, but did that include, where are you? Did that include chewing tobacco?
Stefania? Yeah.
It did? Maybe I... Okay. Smoking and smokeless. Okay. Because we listed the things that they couldn't do, but we didn't list chewing tobacco, which is really dangerous and disgusting also. It should. I just wondered if it could be clarified. It hasn't happened in a long time that I had somebody go with a big wad of. But it's, you know, the chew and the throat cancer and the all that stuff is very dangerous. And I think there's a misconception among young people that vaping is not bad and chewing tobacco is not bad. And with the chewing tobacco, we know for a fact is really, really bad. So I just wondered if it could be clarified. That's all. Thank you.
I appreciate that, Crystal. That's very much. Please. And if you would identify yourself, thank you.
Hi, I am Aviral from Computer Science, and I actually support this motion wholeheartedly. The only hitch that I had was in the definition of these vaping devices, and it was the simulation of smoking. And I expressed my concern to her before, and I think it's not really simulation of smoking, it is actually smoking. But for maybe you have it for legal reasons or whatever. But anyways, I am very supportive of this motion.
Thank you. I'll have Stefania address this.
It's certainly not for legal reason. It's for accuracy. I mean, that describes better how the device works. But you have to keep in mind that we do say electronic smoking devices in the title of the definition, and then under smoking, we list electronic devices. So it's more the concept of vaping being as bad as smoking. I think it's well reinforced already.
Thank you, Chuck. We'll bring up the definition again.
The title of the definition says the electronic smoking devices. Yes, electronic smoking devices. And then under smoking, we have vaping. So, I mean, I don't know how you could rephrase the definition of electronic smoking devices other than the devices that simulate. How would you rephrase it?
I don't think it simulates smoking. It is smoking.
Okay, so how would you rephrase it?
The devices that allow you to smoke through inhalation of vapor or aerosol?
I don't think that would be accurate. Exactly. That's exactly what I told you.
It is simulation of burning. That I agree. But it's not simulation of smoking. It is actually smoking. Yeah, I mean, I agree with him that it is simulation of burning. So it's not burning the tobacco. It is, but smoking is not simulated. Smoking is real. You are actually smoking the vapor. You just don't need to burn the tobacco because you can just, you can just heat it up and its vapors come out. So it is actually heating the tobacco and you are inhaling the vapor. So the smoking part is not simulation, it is devices that... There is vapor. So devices that allow inhalation of vapor.
We had a discussion with this with the committee actually after your email, and we decided that it would not be accurate to change it. I mean, that's what they are. They simulate smoking because they create something that you inhale, but it's not smoke because it's not created by burning. At least that's our conclusion, the committee's conclusion.
Just for the benefit too, this also is a definition of electronic smoking device. This isn't the policy. It's defining what it's a way of describing what electronic smoking is. If a person were to look up electronic smoking in the definition portion of the ACD manual. I don't know if that helps or not.
I'm Dave Wells. I've got a question related from a public health, from the student level. We're aware that the use of electronic smoking devices is increasing among teenagers. I'm not happy about it. My son's had substance abuse issues and is addicted to nicotine and currently vapes. He's not an ASU student. But anyway, that's pretty common for people who have substance abuse issues, that they will engage in these kinds of devices. So my concern has to do with being an inclusive university and figuring out a way in which those kinds of people can still be part of the university and not excluded, while also protecting people's concerns about secondhand smoke. I'm not clear how that's being adjudicated. So if that could get clarified, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you, David. I will definitely follow up on that.
Hi, John Dallin, School of Accountancy, W.P. Carey. We dealt with the compliance issue last year in the Services and Facilities Committee, and I guess that's still just a concern I wanted to raise, is that these policies are great. I fully support it, but there's areas on campus that are known areas where smokers go and smoke. One of them is the structure by the business buildings. I happen to have asthma, I've got chemical sensitivity, and I notice it as soon as I go there, but I think even somebody that doesn't have those issues would notice it. And I know that we're a self-enforcing community, but the issue is that I'm the guy or you're the gal or whatever that has to now say, you're not in compliance. And I've tried to have those conversations tactfully in a friendly manner, and it doesn't seem to really, in most cases, go in a way where I think behavior is going to be changed. We have the same issue at the West Campus, the large lecture hall. I would bet half the times I walk on campus from the parking lot, you smell smoke coming from that area. There's cigarette butts everywhere. And you go, the birds must be smoking because the students aren't supposed to be, right? And I know that, I'm not trying to make a joke out of this here, but the policies are great, but I don't know that it's really, especially for these problem areas, just like we said with, the skateboards and cycling, we've got a situation where people are getting hurt. Mm-hmm. We have a policy in place, and it seems like in the areas where the largest abuses are occurring, we really need to have some help with getting compliance, not from faculty but from folks that are actually have some authority to go and say, you need to stop smoking, you're going to be cited or whatever. And that's just my 2 cents worth. Thanks.
No, I appreciate your sharing that, John. Sincerely, I know enforcement will be a challenge, and then honoring the needs of others as well. So it'll be a balance that we'll try to figure out, but I will follow up with both. Thank you very much. And then we're good on Tempe, so on West Campus. Any? Sorry.
Yes, I'm afraid we have another vocabulary accuracy question/concern.
Hello, this is Ken Sweat from the School of Mathematical and Natural Sciences. From my forensic botany research, I would say a hookah and a water pipe are not electronic devices. They're smoking devices. There's no batteries involved in them, and there is fire. So I don't think those should be listed under electronic smoking devices, and in fact, those should already be illegal under ASU policy.
Thank you. Yeah, we can always make an amendment to maybe move them into more. Our parliamentarian is suggesting that we are allowed to make an amendment so that we can move them more appropriately to where they would be represented accurately. Does that seem reasonable? 1 second.
Donna? They probably should be added to the smoking part, the smoking definition. The burning of, inhaling from, exhaling the smoke from or the possession of a lighted cigar, cigarette, pipe. They probably should be added here if we want to.
That would be more appropriate.
Okay.
We'll just cut and paste it both places. Please.
Yeah, we can put them in both places.
I'll allow our expert, Denise, to speak to this.
Okay, so we need someone to make an amendment to change the wording of this particular proposal, and then we have to then put that before everybody for a vote for the amendment to go through. That doesn't mean that this particular policy goes through. That'll be a vote after the amendment goes through.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So we need someone to make a vote to amend the wording of this document, and a second.
I motion that we amend the document to move hookahs and water pipes into the definition of smoking and out of the definition of electronic smoking devices.
Second?
Motion passed.
I'll be the second.
Thank you, Stefan.
Okay, then we have to now vote for it.
Yeah, Chuck is writing as fast as he can, which is better than I can say for when I have to write.
I'll read the motion since it's in small font there. Do you approve moving hookahs and water pipes into the definition of smoking and out of electronic devices? Yes, A, no, B, and abstain, C.
A couple more seconds. Go ahead and close it, yeah. Well done. All right.
Okay, then we can go ahead and have the amended motion that we can vote on if there can be more discussion on the motion, but now we have the amended motion that we have to vote on.
Okay.
Any other comments that people want to make on the motion in general?
Yeah, are there any other comments while we have a moment?
I'm ready if you are.
All right. Well, then we'll go ahead and we'll vote on the amendment.
So this motion says, do you approve the amended motion 2019-27? A, yes, B, no, C, abstain.
We'll go ahead and close. Thank you, everyone. So 74 yes, 7 no, 2 abstain. Motion's passed. Thank you. Next, as Lily is making her way up, we will have a vote on the curriculum and academic program consent agenda. Thank you.
The following proposals were approved at the last CAPC meeting on January 31st. Request from the Mary Lou Fulton Teachers College for the name change of a graduate degree from MED in Educational Technology to MED in Learning Design and Technologies. Request from the Sandra Day O'Connor College of Law for the establishment of a graduate certificate in trial advocacy. Request from the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences, School of Life Sciences for the establishment of an undergraduate certificate, Computational Life Sciences.
All right, let me just go around to the different campuses, please, to see if there's anything that would like to be removed from the consent agenda for further review. Samin?
No changes.
Wonderful, thank you. Nancy, anything, comments in Polly?
No, nothing here.
Fabulous. Looks like we're fine here in Tempe. And Stefan?
No questions, no concerns.
Thank you very much. All right, well, can we go ahead and call a vote, please? Thank you. We'll go ahead and close. Perfect. 79 yes, 0 no, 1 abstain. So motion's passed as well. Thank you, everyone. We'll go ahead with we don't have any committee chair reports. I'll go ahead and provide an opportunity for open forum. And if you have something that you'd like to comment or present a topic, by all means, please come up to the mic. Do we have anybody here for open forum in Tempe? Crystal, please. Sorry, I went out of order. Pardon me.
Hi, Crystal Griffith, School of Film, Dance, and Theater. When Krasnov was here, I wondered, I just talked to a colleague of mine who happened to be sitting next to me, if he had seen the materials that were posted. And so I missed the opportunity while he was here, but perhaps if there's time allowing, we could go around and just get a show of hands for faculty who've seen those materials at varying levels, because I know I didn't see that many of them.
Yeah,
Thank you.
That's great. So thank you, Crystal. That's a great question. And so I will start with downtown Phoenix campus, and maybe first begin with, a show of hands. Are you as senators familiar with some of the content that was, kind of personalized for your college, for downtown? Some? Yes? Okay. All right.
With the counseling services, Donna?
Yeah, for counseling services, exactly,
Yes.
from Aaron. Yeah, all right. Yeah. Pretty good. Well, fantastic. All right. But we can still, I'm sure we can still do better. That having been said, any open forum questions from downtown as well, please?
No questions downtown.
All right, thank you. Nancy, in Polytechnic, same question. Were majority of senators familiar with some of the content that's available to them that Aaron discussed? That kind of show of hands? Say it like you mean it. All right, so there wasn't an overwhelming wave of hands going around, so that's great. I'll definitely connect people with that content. And then again, any questions for open forum from Polytechnic?
No questions.
All righty. I don't want to miss Tempe again, just in case. I know I kind of threw a river curve. And then Stefan, anyone in West Campus?
No questions, thank you.
All right, and then just one last thing before the end of the day. I wanted to, seeing as how we have been provided Chuck again for this Senate meeting and Senate Meeting 7, so thank you. We wanted to just, one last thing to help you with your transition to the Director of Academic Integrity at the Fulton College of Engineering. Is that School of Engineering? We thought this would be a great, please come on over here. This would be a good tool to maybe use. It's, some people know his history as a coach. So there's 2 whistles in here.
Oh, wow. Wow, these are going to come in handy.
So one is your typical coach whistle. I don't know if people can see that. And then the other is a whistle that was used by a British police officer. So it may be whistles for escalating academic integrity and bringing awareness.
Thank you very much. Thanks, everyone. It's great to see everyone, and I look forward to working with the Fulton Schools of Engineering faculty moving forward. So thanks so much.
Thank you. We really appreciate it. On that note, we are adjourned for Senate Meeting 6, and have a great rest of the week. Pardon me? Oh gosh, yeah, please. Sorry, I didn't mean to discount. I've already. Yeah, faculty, senators here who are familiar with some of Aaron's content. All right, we can do, not bad. We can do better. All right. Well, okay, thank you. I'll make sure that that information goes out to everybody. I appreciate that. We are officially adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Have a great afternoon, great week. You're almost there to spring break. Hang in there.